Ask Me Anything About Politics. This is the show where you can ask anything that you like about politics, and I will do my best to give you a great answer. Everybody is welcome here, whether you are new to politics or somebody who has thought a lot about it and is deep in the weeds on it. You can be a left-wing person or a right-wing person. You can be a novice, you can be an expert. So long as you got a good faith question, you can go ahead and throw it in the chat, and we will get to answering them. I know that politics can be really intimidating when you're first trying to learn about it. I know it can feel like trying to learn a new language with all the various abbreviations and last names that just get bandied about as though we're all supposed to know these words already. So there's no tea, no shade here, no shame. Just throw in your questions. No one's going to make fun of you or roast you or harass you or bully you. What is up, Viva? Good to see you again. What is up, Mikhail Meme? Good to see you again. Willie says Trump's mom was more of an IOU. Trump's memo of understanding was more of an IOU. Yeah, Willie, 100%, man. I mean, there's this like weird discord that's going on the internet right now, which is like, should we be accurately describing the memo of understanding as a capitulation of the Trump government to the Iranian government? Because I think that that's accurately what's happening, but we also don't want to shame him too much, where he then goes back on the deal, and then just goes back into the war, and it's like now we're wasting even more money, and gas is even in shorter supply, and the strait is closed for longer. So yeah, man, it's a fucking bullshit deal, but we should 100% take it. Patrick Dick says, how many genders are there? I don't know. Wooter Nearnick says, are you an American? Yes. Main account says, what's more harmful, National Socialism or communism? I don't think either of them are all that harmful, M says, yeah, it's a good thing there's a deal, but it's also true that's not a great one. 100% agree. Willie says, is it true that the U.S. is going to pay Iran $300 billion in restitution? So I've seen two different reports on this. I have seen that this is just a preliminary deal and that nothing has been set in stone. I have also seen that some of this money is already being made available to the Iranian government. And so I'm not 100% sure which is accurate. It is possible that some funds are going into Iran as we speak, but that when the faucet will be cut off is still open to debate. This is where everything with Trump is concerned, it's a moving target. So until it happens, nobody's really sure what's happening. Patrick Dick says, do you love America? Of course I love America. I was born and raised here. Chloe says, what's the difference between a liberal and a Democrat? So people might differ with the way that I define these terms, Chloe, but I would say that a Democrat is a political party in which you have different political philosophies. Like, you could be a liberal and not be a Democrat, but if you're a Democrat, you are probably somewhere on the left-wing spectrum. So I would say that a liberal is somebody who's like more of a centrist Democrat, so somebody like a Chuck Schumer or a Nancy Pelosi type. And it's possible that you can be liberal and not be a Democrat, and you can be Democrat and be like a lefty or a progressive Democrat or a democratic socialist and stuff like that. But yeah, I think that Democrat is kind of like the party, which is like a big tent, and theoretically everybody is welcome in the Democratic coalition. So whether you're a left or liberal or a lefty, or a tanky or an independent, like everybody is welcome in the Democratic Party. Okay, let's see here. John Abbott says, any thoughts on the Nate Bargatze situation? I mean, that one breaks my heart because I think that Nate Bargatze is fucking hilarious, but at the same time, like, I don't think that you get to hide under the umbrella of I don't know what I'm talking about. I'm an idiot. Like, if you have an audience, if you're an adult, then you should recognize this shit that is going on right now, all right, Ecuadorian says, as an immigrant, how am I supposed to understand every aspect of American politics? There's still so much I don't get, and so much I'm still trying to get, and I don't know how to feel. I mean, you don't need to understand all of American politics. Like, a lot of Americans don't understand any American politics, so I wouldn't worry about that necessarily, Ecuadorian. Mikhail Meme says, have you ever seen an ICE patrol or ICE car, ICE arrests, or ICE raids in real life? I didn't see like any like big protests or anything like that, but I did pass by some ICE vehicles when I was on my way to jury duty in downtown. All right. Fabio says, I look like Hernan Drago. I don't know who that is. JJ says, Vance has won me over. He's bringing common sense to the Israel-Iran conflict. I think that is inaccurate, JJ, and I find it weird that that is something that you are saying out loud. Patrick Duke says, can you still be a Republican without being MAGA? Of course, there are lots of Republicans who aren't MAGA. Fabio, no, I am in the middle of my live stream. Stop spamming the comments. Someone with no screen name says, what do you think of mass illegal immigration in Europe? I don't see what the big deal is. Obviously, there's logistical issues with mass immigration, but immigrants are a net positive wherever they go. So I would recommend everybody just chill the fuck out. All right. Henry, I'm going to give you an opportunity to not be anti-Semitic going forward. Ayad says, Israel or Palestine? I support the citizens of both countries. I'm against the governing bodies of both countries. JJ says, are you for or against the Memorandum of Understanding? I am for it, but it is bad. Like, there's no, describing it as not a shitty deal for America, but it is a deal that we should 100% take because Trump has put us in a losing position. And so we either lose more or we cash out now. Ayad says, you said my name wrong. Sorry. The dude says Trump. Do you have a question? Nikki Grimm says, do you think Jefferson messed up by changing the loser is the VP policy? I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. Honestly, Nikki, I haven't even thought about that for 2 seconds in my whole life. Kat says, to what extent should a government intervene in a free market to reduce economic inequality? I would say, so if there are hungry people, then the government needs to intervene. If there are people living on the street, then the government needs to intervene. If there are people who cannot afford essentials like healthcare, then the government should intervene. Once everybody's basic needs are met, then I think maybe we can talk about taking our foot off the gas pedal and letting the free market start settling some issues. All right, Adams Garden, good to see you as well. Tyler says, any thoughts on the UFC fight? I did like how they honored the MOH recipients. I don't know who the MOH recipients are, but I personally think that it was a waste of time, energy, and money. And I think that every American who is currently suffering should be pissed as hell that Trump is way more interested in throwing himself birthday parties at taxpayer expense than trying to make your healthcare cheaper, housing more available and affordable, and bringing down gas prices and food prices and shit like that. Claudia says, there's one teenage boys in my year who keep saying reform is good. How can I disprove them? So I don't know if what you want to try to do is like debate them and argue them. I guess I would try to figure out like why they think reform is good and then try to connect the dots with them, not at them, but with them, that the problems that they are upset about are caused by the billionaires and not by immigrants. But persuading people is a big project, especially if people are hype about their political party already. So I would just say if that is something that you're interested in, be patient, do more listening than talking, ask more questions than make statements. Rabab, thank you so much for helping me reach my first gift goal of the day. Raymond says, did you read Marx? I did a little bit in college. I don't remember a ton. Ethan says, what you think about social media getting banned for U16s? I don't know what U16s are. I don't know where they're being banned. Let's see here. Someone with no screen name says, who is the best U.S. president in your opinion? Oh, I've got no idea. In my lifetime, I would say it's between Obama and Biden. Obama, I think, was a better president. Biden, I think, had a more progressive and productive administration, even though he was only president for one term. Okay, let's see here. Oh, under 16s. Gotcha. What do you think about social media getting banned for under 16s? I am for it. 100%. Social media is toxic to children. And so do not let your children be on social media before they are 16. Okay, Chama says, thoughts on the Patriot Act? I think it's a little overly security focused. You know, like we're giving away a lot of our civil liberties in exchange for security that may or may not be panning out. So I think it could probably use a rewrite. Revival UK says, is abortion murder? I don't think so. US says, really? Question mark. I don't know what you're reallying. Steven says, SCOTUS just entered Hunter Biden's firearm case. Yeah, I saw that. So if you are somebody who is in possession of gardening supplies, they cannot charge you with a felony for owning a firearm, which is big for the Second Amendment people, I suppose. Adams Garden says kids shouldn't be exposed and exploited for profit. Completely agree. Twigsy says, what do you think about the Trianon Treaty? I don't know what that is. Will says, do you support the Greens? I support the UK Greens. The American Greens are completely full of shit. Atal says, thoughts on gay people. If they want to be, people want to be gay, they should be able to be gay. If people want to be trans, they should be able to be trans. If people want to be straight, they should be able to be straight. You know, whatever floats your boat, man. So long as you're not infringing on the life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness of your fellow citizens, then fucking go for it. If there's any gay people here, I have a sincere question. Are you having fun with the fact that the phrase reopen the strait and closing the straits is in the news like 24/7 these days because of the Strait of Hormuz? I feel like if I was in the gay community, I would be having a lot of fun with that. Like if I have a buddy who's like really good at converting straight people to gay people, we could be like, he just reopened the straits or something, you know, or like, oh, I was hooking up with that guy, but he decided he's not going to be with dudes anymore. I guess the straight closed, you know, shit like that. Let me know. Let me know. And if not, that's for you. That's for you to enjoy. That's free. Okay, let's see here. Mikhail Meme says, what is a liberal? Depending on who defines it, I would say a liberal is somebody who's towards the center left, as opposed to somebody who's a progressivist on the far left. Patrick Dick says, was Trump better in 2016, 2020 than now? I think he's been exactly as terrible, corrupt, and incompetent and self-serving as he has always been. But I think that between 2016 and 2020, there were a lot more Republicans in the government who were not down with Trump doing all of the wildly illegal and fascist shit that he's currently doing. So arguably his first term was better just because there were more adults reining him in. Okay, Gumball says, best UK party and why? I only know that it's not Reform, it's not Restore, and it's not the Tories. Kat says, does the state derive its power from the consent of the governed or from its monopoly on violence? I would say the consent of the governed. Steven says, SCOTUS said Trump can deport people to third country like South Sudan. Did that decision happen just today? I did not hear about that. That is a bummer if that is true. Jeff says, what do you think about democracy? I'm for it. Sion says, why would a people make it so obvious they have foreign allegiance? Because they don't believe that they're going to be punished, maybe? Sion? I don't know who you're referring to. Patrick Dick says, how old should you be to change your gender? So, Patrick Dick, I am not an expert in the proper procedure for how and when a child should begin their journey into transitioning. All I do know is this, that if you talk to the people who actually do this procedure, they tell you that it is a very slow and careful process where, like, you start with small things like name changes and wearing different clothing, and then you eventually potentially progress to hormone blockers, and then after that, depending on how old and how things have been going, then maybe you progress even further. If there are places that are doing this like really slapdash and crazy and pressuring kids into going like full bore 100%, like everybody should be against that, and as far as I know, everybody is. So this idea of the left loving when doctors just chop kids' dicks off like left and right, like that is not accurate in the least. But if you allow children to go through that careful process, it ends up being way better for their mental health, and you see a lot less destructive behavior coming from the youth. All right, Josh says, what do you think about My Body, My Choice? I'm for it. Daniel says, will Russia attack the Baltic countries? I don't know. You know, Putin has been doing a lot of saber rattling, but it also seems like this war that he started against Ukraine is having deleterious effects on his ability to hold power in his own country. And so I am skeptical that he has the ability to wage more than the one war. It seems like he's trying to wind down the current war, you know? All right, Jim Morrison says, Iran won, no arguments here. BitNevo says, what's to stop Musk from claiming he owns the USA after leveraging his wealth against our 401ks? I don't know, BitNevo, but it seems like a thin argument to me. Taz says, America is waking up and becoming allied again with Russia and the world. No, America is not becoming allied with Russia, and I would even go so far as to say that the current administration is trying to unally the entire world. They're trying to break up like all of the sort of like groups, like they're trying to break up NATO and they're trying to break up the EU and shit like that. All right, Constantino says, "What do you think about Greece and Turkey?" I don't know enough about them. Opposed Chimera says, "Your opinion on the deal and the strait opening?" It's a bad deal, but we should take it so that the strait can be opened. Taz says the United States is tired of Israel and wants to break this alliance. I mean, kinda. It's a little bit more complicated than that, Taz. I don't love how you just keep making these blanket statements, Taz. So you're in question jail. You either ask a question or you leave. Patrick Dick says, "What is a centrist? Somebody who is not on the far ends of the political spectrum of whatever party they align with." Twigsy says, "What do you think about immigrants?" I'm for them. Koale says, "What do you believe about Hamas?" I don't believe anything about Hamas. I just know what the facts are, and the facts are that they believe that they have utilized collective punishments and have harmed innocent civilians. Ergo, they are a terrorist organization. Kat says, "Can democracy legitimately use undemocratic means to defend itself from destruction?" I mean, I suppose, like if we're being really idealistic about this, we shouldn't, but I can imagine a scenario in which hypothetically it would be the smart thing to do, like the ends justify the means, but that's, that could be a slippery slope. Josh says, "What do you think about LGBTQ and should they teach it in school?" So I guess I would ask you what you mean by teaching it in school. Like, I think the idea that these different categories of human being exist is a very good way to let children know that if maybe they are feeling like they're different than everybody else, then that could potentially help them to in their development. It is harmful for a person to be growing up and only learning that the correct way is this one way, and if they don't fit in that one way, then they start thinking like there's something wrong with me, and that can be really deleterious to their physical and mental health. So I think that they should 100% be aware that these different categories of human being and sexuality exist. Now, I don't think that schools are indoctrinating children into an LGBTQIA agenda. Like, I don't believe that schools are pressuring children into being LGBTQIA. And oftentimes, when people say that children shouldn't be taught about the LGBTQIA community, that's what they mean. But I think we should be clear that that's not what anybody's advocating for. Like, I'm not advocating for that, and I'm pretty skeptical that it's happening anywhere. All right, Morgan Insight says, "Why do people focus on culture wars versus trying to increase the minimum wage or a paid family leave?" So I do believe that there are some people who have been tricked into leaning into the culture war, Morgan, but I would say that the focus on the culture war is specifically a tool that is being used by the billionaire class and the right-wing autocrats that are in league with them. So we all come up on here on social media, on all the various social media channels, and we watch the news, and all we see is this culture war bullshit. Like, and I truly believe this is inorganic. Like, I don't think this is what people want to fight about, but I think that the people in power have recognized that if we're arguing about things like UFC and, whether Democrats can be hot or if they're all fat with blue hair, then we're not actually addressing the current people who are in power, the rich and the powerful, who need to be legislated to the point where they can no longer harm us. So yeah, you'll never hear me trying to engage in that culture war stuff. And I think that if you are talking to somebody who is trying to engage with you on that, you should just assume that that's not a real person and that that person is from a bot farm, because there's really, I don't really believe that there's any benefit in giving that person, the aura of humanity. Patrick Dick says, "Do they have any requirements that you have to do before getting American citizenship?" Oh yeah, there's a lot of requirements. It's very difficult, Patrick Dick. It's very difficult, long, and expensive process. Made even more difficult and long and expensive by the Trump administration, unless, of course, you are white, in which case they like to kind of like speed run you through there for some reason. Isn't that weird? Rabab, Triska, and Adam's Garden, thank you so much for helping me reach my second gift goal of the day. Ocean of Echoes Music says, "Does Israel control our government?" No. They have a lot of influence in our government, but they do not control our government. Anybody with a lot of money has a lot of influence over our government. Gore Lamy says, "What's your ideal system?" I'm a progressive Democrat, so I like the Democratic Socialists. I like the Nordic model. Clean Fresh Edit says, "Thoughts on JD Vance's press tour right now?" The dude is charismaless. He has no riz. The dude has yeah, he ain't got it. And I am really enjoying him fall flat on his face everywhere that he goes. All right, Rabab, thank you so much for helping me reach my third gift goal today. And that means at 20 minutes in, it is Finger Hearts O'Clock, the best part of the day. Finger Hearts O'Clock. Patrick Dick says, what requirements do you have for immigrants? Honestly, that is not a process that I have undergone, so I couldn't tell you more specifically, but you have to know some base knowledge about American history and American government. Excuse me. And I believe that there's like, background checks and you have to have proof of being able to take care of yourself in employment and stuff like that, I think. Ryan says, who would you support in British politics? Not the Tories, not Reform, and not Restore. Average Joe, great to see you again, says, why do people focus on culture, war, propaganda? Emotions are more powerful motivator than logic. It's a deflection to draw away from policies, and it's easier to feel powerful when punching down versus punching up. 100% agree with Average Joe. Mikhail says, what would you do if suddenly Democratic states and cities turn Republican, Republican states and cities turn Democratic? I guess the first thing I would do would go, whoa, 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 whoa. All right, Triska, great to see you again. Says, what's Vance up to with his media tour, grifting, or getting ready to take over the presidency? I think he's preparing for a run for the presidency. Potentially, he sees Trump's health failing, and he's trying to set himself up as a good president beforehand. But yeah, I think that he's basically just doing the thing that everybody does when they're right about to run for president and trying to get as much attention as they can and try to kind of like rewrite their own history to not be terrible and complicit in the shit that the Trump administration has been doing. Iani says, has the World Cup united the world in some way this year? I feel like it always does. The countries are flawed, FIFA is flawed, but the game is great, and people are really, and the fans are great, and people are going all over the world and being fucking dope as hell to everybody and partying together, win or lose. They're celebrating each other's culture. Like, I stand, man. King Dean says, how is Trump's health failing? I mean, he's a really old guy. I definitely don't have any specific information on what is wrong with him, but I don't think that you see the doctor 3 times in a year and see 22 specialists in 1 week if you're doing great as an 80-year-old. King Dean says, do you think Biden did a good job? If so, please elaborate. So it's difficult to accurately describe whether or not Biden did a good job because it's not really clear if the good things that came out of the Biden administration were from Biden or from his team. Because according to reporting, he was so old and enfeebled that he wasn't making a lot of decisions and he wasn't like working most of the day. So do I think that the Biden administration was wildly successful? Absolutely. Very pro-union, very pro-worker, very pro-democracy, pro-alliances. They got a lot of shit done. The Inflation Reduction Act was an incredible piece of legislation that should have cruised Democrats into massive victories in 2024. And for reasons that we don't need to go into, that didn't happen. But it really was a career-making piece of legislation. Now, I will say that the 2 things that we know that Biden was directly responsible for, I think were like the worst things that came out of the Biden administration, namely continuing to support Israel after it had been found that they had done war crimes and also deciding to run for a second term. So, it's a mixed bag. Alrighty, let's see here. Mikhail Meme says, thoughts on Greg Abbott? I'm against him. They hate Juan says, I feel politics these days are more about bad-mouthing each other than actually trying to fix things. Well, I think that if there are people that you are listening to that are doing that, they hate Juan, then I don't think you should listen to those people. But you will not hear me do that on this live stream. I badmouth people that have a lot of power who I believe are acting in bad faith. So like right-wing politicians and like right-wing mouthpieces like Ben Shapiro. But I will never disparage voters. I will never say that Republican voters are bad or that MAGA voters are bad. All right, C-Ax, stop spamming the comments. Patrick Dick says, do you think Jews should have a right to a country? I don't think that any specific religion deserves their own country, but I do think that the people who are currently living in Israel should be able to stay in their country. But I also think the people currently living in Palestine should be able to stay in their country. Like, I don't think that the West Bank settlers are are doing a good job. I think that's probably an understatement. But yeah, I think Israel has the right to exist the same way that Germany has the right to exist, the same way that Russia, Palestine, North Korea, etc. CX, you were warned, so now you are out of here. I don't like it when people spam the comments. They hate Juan says, no Trump and Kamala, Democrats and Republicans just badmouth each other. I addressed that, Juan. If you keep on spamming the comments, I'm going to boot you. Army Wife says, what are your thoughts about Candace Owens? Candace Owens is a liar and a con artist. She is a conspiracy theorist. That is where she makes her money. People should not believe her or listen to her or subscribe to her various channels. Jason says, what do you think about the trade embargo on anime body pillows? It seems like, are you here in my live stream asking anime body pillow questions every fucking day, man? I'm not mad at it because you're not spamming. You just give me a chuckle and then you don't ask anything fucking else. What is up, Lauren? Great to see you again. All right. Average Joe says, I cover current events, explain the propaganda tactics being used and why they work, explain the subliminal messaging, and promote progressive politics. Love to see it. All right. John Abbott has given us a little bit more information about becoming a citizen. With the U.S. Civics Test for Citizenship, it is an oral test. There are a possible 124 questions. 10 questions are selected at random, and you must be able to sufficiently answer 6 of them. Interesting. All right. Okay. Corby says, reform is going to win. I sure hope they don't. They hate Juan says, do you think Trump's first term is better than the current one? I think it's less damaging than the current one, but I don't think it's because Trump was better. I think it's because the Republican Party was not as psychotic as it currently is. Colleen says, you look like Jacob Hoff. Is that a compliment? I don't know who that is. Josh says, what do you think about Trump investigating Gavin Newsom and Gavin call him the most corrupt president? I think Gavin Newsom is correct in calling him the most corrupt president. I think we have seen direct evidence of the Trump administration weaponizing the Department of Justice against his rivals, where there's no evidence that the Department of Justice was ever weaponized against Trump, but he was constantly saying that that was happening. There's no evidence that it ever happened. Meanwhile, he is out there with his whole ass saying, I am weaponizing the Justice Department against my enemies. So, every accusation is a confession. Liverpool says, are you Jewish? No, I don't celebrate any religion. My dad was Jewish. I don't know if you want to count that. Okay, Josh says, do you think he should run for 2028? I mean, he should if he wants to. He's not my first choice. Italo Balbo says, would you date a black Catholic anti-Israel fascist woman who works at JP Morgan? Yeah, I've dated lots of different kinds of people in my life, but I wouldn't date anybody now because I'm happily married with a baby. All right, Brian Kelly, I do not believe that you are here in good faith, so I'm just going to go ahead and block you now. They Hate Juan says, do you feel the UFC White House was just a political play? I mean, it was a political play, but it was also a opportunity for grifting. Like Trump was advertising companies that him and his family are heavily invested in, and that there are their companies during that event on the White House lawn. Like, that was a massive ethical violation. I'm pretty sure it was illegal. But yeah, there was ads for his fucking cryptocurrency. There was ads for Truth Social. There was ads for World Liberty Financial. Yeah, every American should be pissed off about this. Every American should be pissed off that their White House, that's our White House, not his, their White House and their tax dollars were used for a pro-Trump event that was explicitly used to make him richer. Instead of bringing down healthcare costs, instead of building more houses, instead of stopping the gross excesses of immigration enforcement, instead of bringing down the cost of gas or food or whatever, he was just busy stealing more of your money and putting it in his pocket. Alrighty. Miguel Meme says, do you think the left is going to win the elections this year in Sweden? I've got no idea. Archie says, do you think Trump is smarter than people think and his dumb comments are some sort of marketing? No, I do not believe that Trump is playing 3D chess. I believe that he is exactly as incompetent, as corrupt as he seems to be. All right. Hasten says, remigration in Germany. Remigration is a policy that is built in racism and hate. It demonizes immigrants and blames them for problems that are caused by the billionaire class. So you can leave that remigration shit off of my live stream, Hasten. Okay, Patrick Dick says, do you think it's good that younger people are starting to care more about politics? Yes, 100%. JV1 says, and he just signed what is going to replace the JCPOA. It's now the JFCPOS. I don't know what that stands for, JV1, but I'm pretty sure that's something silly. I don't know. All right, the hate wants says, do you feel Kamala being a woman was a big factor of her losing the election? I think there were bigger factors, but I definitely think there were a lot of things working against her. The fact that she only had 107 days to mount her campaign, the fact that she was a woman, the fact that she was a person of color, the fact that the Biden administration ruined the credibility of the Democratic Party by hiding his condition from party leaders like Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer and Hakeem Jeffries. The fact that the Biden administration put their full support behind the Netanyahu government, even though it was concluded that they had done war crimes. The fact that all of our information systems have been captured by the billionaire class, and we're pumping out misinformation and propaganda 24/7 to convince people to either not vote or vote for the Republican Party. Like, there were a lot of things going on. Incumbency bias was a thing. Vina says the fact that Kamala didn't defend the border. It wasn't Kamala's job to defend the border. Jack says, I have a feeling that the UK government are banning social media because of the young politics. I think that is a little bit of a stretch. I believe that the data is clear that social media is really bad for kids. So, yeah, I am skeptical that there are nefarious purposes therein. Kat says, if the USA managed to land on the moon within the next 2 years, would Trump claim it? Yes. Jim Franco says, Americans are finding out why they revolted against the king in the first place. LOL. I mean, some of us have been knowing this for a while. Okay, Hassa says, do you think it's good for someone to hate themselves? No, I do not think it's good for someone to hate themselves. That's not really a question about politics, but, you know, if there are things that I can do and say to help somebody not hate themselves, then I will do them. Josh says, what are your predictions for 2028? I do not make political predictions. They are worthless. Tutton McGaber says, opinion on Orban's losing the elections after 16 years. I think that we are seeing a slow and difficult swing away from the right-wing authoritarian sort of like moment that has been going on for the past 10 or 15 years. And I think that Orban losing his election is a sign of that happening. And hopefully we can build on those gains. But the right-wing autocrats and the billionaire class see all of their losses, and they're fucking terrified. And so they are going to be kicking it into high gear to try to make sure that the people do not regain a footing in global politics. Jack says, what's your opinion on a multi-party government instead of just the current two? I'm for it, but you need ranked choice voting in order to make it so that other candidates aren't spoilers. And the Democratic Party is the only party that is interested in ranked choice voting and opening up the political process to more parties. So the only way out of the two-party system is through the Democratic Party. Ash says, will Republicans successfully overturn Obergefell v. Hodges? I do not know. I'm not actually even sure what is the current Supreme Court case in which that is being challenged. I haven't heard about that in a long time. Anne says, do you think planned economy is good for the economy? I think some regulation is okay. I don't know how far a planned economy into regulation is. Josh says, do trans people have a right? They have many rights. Kat says, do you think there would be a peaceful power transfer once Trump's term ends? The only person who can decide that is Donald Trump. He can decide to make it a not peaceful transfer of power like he did in 2020, or he can decide to make it a peaceful transfer of power. But either way, he is leaving office. That is not up to him to decide. He is gone. Alrighty, let's see here. Josh says, do you think socialism work in the U.S.? It is currently working in the U.S. Public schools, the fire department, the military, those are all socialist programs. And I think we could use some more. Like, I think we could use some more socialized housing, socialized higher education, and socialized healthcare. Vina Farrell says, you can't condemn January 6th, but then celebrate the riots during BLM. I don't celebrate the riots during BLM, but I do celebrate the mostly peaceful BLM movement that happened. But also there's a difference between the violence that happened during BLM and January 6th. Like, January 6th was specifically a violent thing that was incited by the sitting president in order to try to overturn an election. I don't think that you're a real person. I think that you're just here to to stir shit up. Vina, you're in question jail. So unless you ask a question, you're out of here. Vina says, like, you can't claim the right are dangerous and can't be trusted when y'all rioted during BLM. Again, we didn't riot during BLM. BLM was 99% peaceful. The FBI found that almost all of the violence and destruction was either incited or done by right-wing agitators. And even the FBI says that most of the violence that happens, most of the political violence that happens is right-wing violence. All right, scrolling down to the bottom. Daniel, stop spamming the comments. Says, will Russia attack Slavic corridor? I don't know. I don't think so. Jack says, what's your opinion on rug decriminalization in the UK right now? I'm for it generally. I can't speak too much about it because otherwise my channel gets flagged. Average Joe says, can I address the false equivalency between BLM and the January 6th riots? Absolutely, Average Joe. Fill in any places that I left out. You know, I thought I had it covered, but if I'm missing anything, fucking go crazy, man. Take the mantle and run with it. Okay, Josh says, who do you think killed Charlie Kirk? Do you think it was our own government or Israel? I don't know who killed Charlie Kirk. I think it was whoever's on trial right now, but I could be wrong. I don't know. Ryan says, thoughts on Scottish independence? If Scots want to be independent, then they should be. Light Yagami says, is transphobic to not date a trans woman based on the fact that they are trans? You know, I think that we should be open to the idea that somebody can be more sexually attracted to a trans person than a non-trans person. And I think that we should be okay with the idea of a person being more attracted to a non-trans person than being attracted to a trans person. I think that if you are out there with your whole ass being like, trans people are gross, all trans people are gross, I would never fuck one, that's a little shitty and transphobic. But if you're just like, I would much rather prefer to date a non-trans person just because that's my sexuality, I don't think that we can shake a stick at that, you know? Venice says, do you celebrate or condone? You said celebrate or condone the political assassination of Charlie Kirk. I don't do either of those things, Vina. I condemn every kind of political violence, whether it's against the left or the right. Do you condemn the Democratic state senators in Minnesota that were assassinated, Vina? Question for you. Anne says, do you think authoritarianism is necessary for stabilizing the country under social instability? No. H. Cooper says, yeah, just let people do what they want, but accept everyone. Generally speaking, I think that is accurate, so long as you're not infringing on the life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness of other citizens. All right, Average Joe says, in nonviolent resistance movements, there are always acts of peripheral violence that is not part of the movement itself. The oppressive entity loves using this to increase violence. The January 6th insurrection was the movement. Their goal was to stop the election by any means necessary, not limited to the use of violence. Average Joe spitting facts 24/7. Goes with the Gozerian. Good to see you again. What is your opinion on the secret group by Peter Thiel that is made up of Dems, Republicans, and wealthy? I think Peter Thiel is a super weird guy. I think that you have to be extremely skeptical of all rich people, especially those that are meeting in secret to discuss like how to be kings and how to start cults and shit like that. So yeah, lots of people got invited to those things, but not everybody went to those things. I think we should be a lot more critical of the people that actually went and of Peter Thiel himself than of anybody that got invited. Like there's a creator on TikTok named Under the Desk News who was invited to those things many times, but she never went. Mikhail Meme says, would you vote for me, Jared? I would need to know what your platform is. Okay. User a whole bunch of numbers says, it's getting worse. Look at Ukraine. Don't know what that means. Light Yagami says, opinion on Northern Ireland. I have no opinion on it. Shar Matsuyazayan says, what are your thoughts on Marxism? If Marxism is the workers owning the means of production, then I'm for it. If it is the government telling me which jobs I'm allowed to do, then I am not for it. Phalangilista says, hello, are you a phalangist? I am not. Kula says, thoughts on neoliberal? No, I'm not doing phalangelism. Light Yagami says, like the riots. I don't know if I agree with that, Light Yagami. Smokes Creek says, I would go to one and record it for everyone to hear. Go to what? Josh says, do you think Israel has a huge impact in our elections and government? Tangentially, yes. Where AIPAC, which is an extremely well-funded right-wing organization that supposedly is lobbying on behalf of the relationship between Israel and America, but is able to call itself is able to not register as a foreign actor because they are made up entirely of American dollars. they have swayed a lot of elections against progressive Democrats and against Democrats generally, and so that can influence the way that our government behaves. But it is just one of many influences. I would not say that Israel controls the American government. Okay, I don't know who Myron Gaines is. Jeff says, "Are you in the SS?" I mean, are we talking about 1940s Germany SS? Then the answer is no. All right, Sharmut Zayan says, "How can workers own means of production without suppressing the wealthy capitalist class?" I mean, is it suppression to take back ill-gotten gains? Is it suppression to solve income inequality? If I legally oppress my workers and pay them starvation wages, is it just or unjust to try to fix that situation, Sharmut? I do not believe that taxing somebody who has $1 billion until they only have $500 million is suppressing the wealthy capitalist. I believe that human beings can have a very, very nice life for a couple of generations with $500 million of worth. So yeah, if you wake up one day, you had 50 billion and now you only have 500 million, I will cry you exactly 0 tears. Michaela Meme says, "What platform are you talking about? Like your political platform? Like what's your policies? What do you stand by? What do you hope to accomplish?" Michaela Meme. All right, Smokes Creek says, "We are living in the Gilded Age, complete with robber barons like Jeff Bezos and Elon Musk, not good." I completely agree, Smokes Creek. In fact, I think we have worse income inequality now than we did during the Gilded Age. Mike Goodwin says, "Will Trump be impeached and removed after the midterms?" So it's unlikely that he'll be removed, but definitely not impossible. It is very likely that he'll be impeached. The only thing necessary for him to be impeached would be for Democrats to get a majority in the House, and it's looking likely that that is going to happen. Removing him from office requires a 2/3 vote in the Senate, which is mathematically possible, but statistically very unlikely. Unless, of course, there are some Republican defectors who decide to vote to remove Trump from office in the Senate, which I wouldn't hold my breath for that to happen. You will never lose money betting on Republican politicians doing the wrong thing. Planet Eater Moro, please stop spamming the comments. Smoke Creek says it would be entertaining for him to be impeached again, but counterproductive unless we get the Senate. I disagree. I think if he deserves to be impeached and you can impeach him, you should impeach him. Iad says, "Do you support Trump?" No, I do not. Josh says, "How do you feel about Elon Musk becoming $1 trillion net worth?" I have a lot of feelings about it. Number one, I think it's mostly on paper. I think it is indicative of how thin the fabric of our markets are, that companies that are massively unprofitable can have such high value and create such wealth for the people that are in control of them. That being said, if one person has $1 trillion while any human being is starving, then that is a policy failure. And Elon Musk should be fucking ashamed of himself. It should be fucking embarrassing to be that wealthy while there are people who are starving. If there's one person sleeping on the street and you're driving a fucking Bugatti, you should be embarrassed. That is fucking shameful. Like, I hope people piss on your fucking car, man. I'm not telling anybody out there to go do that. I'm not advocating for that. I just really hope that somebody did it, you know? Oh, boy. Yeah, that shit makes me fucking furious. Anyways, Oreo says, "If he is impeached, why can he not be removed?" He can be removed. It's just unlikely because the Republican Party puts their own political future and their power ahead of the good of the American people. And so they cannot be trusted to impeach a member of their own party, even if that person has done wildly impeachable things. And let's be clear, Donald Trump has done many, many, many wildly impeachable things. And I think that it is I think it is completely disqualifying of every single Republican politician who isn't voting to impeach Donald Trump that they haven't impeached Donald Trump. Honestly, just like that thing by itself, if I wasn't already somebody who was well aware of the sins of the Republican Party, that by itself, I would be like, I am never voting for a Republican politician ever again. Okay, Average Joe says, "How disgusting is it that just a fraction of Musk's wealth is now more than his USAID cuts, which resulted in the deaths of tens, possibly hundreds of thousands of deaths. I mean, the numbers that I saw were in the millions, not that had been done, but that will be done because of Elon Musk's Doge cuts. Yeah, the billionaire class is constantly telling you, you can't have that. You can't have clean water. You can't have clean air. You can't have cheap food or houses. You can't have higher education. You can't have that. You can't have a less than 40-hour work week. You can't have paid sick leave. You can't have family leave. You just can't have that stuff because it's really important that we have golden jets and eat lobster and caviar 3 fucking meals a day. Well, I'm fucking sorry, but that economy doesn't work for me, and that's the reason why I do these fucking live streams trying to get people to vote against the political party that is aligned with these right-wing fucking billionaires, and that is the Republican Party. Alrighty. Triska has accurately pointed out that screw 'em in the US is a direct consequence of cutting USAID. That is 100% accurate. And we were spending less money keeping screw room out of the country than we will have to spend to get it back out of the country. Josh says, who do you think is the biggest threat to the US? The billionaire class. Lily Apple says, what do you think of communism? If communism is the workers only the means of production, then I'm for it. If communism is the government telling me what jobs I'm allowed to do, then I am not for it. Gonzo Gospel says, is MAGA and Israel first the same thing? You know, as much as I want to say yes, Gonzo, I don't believe that that is accurate to say. I think MAGA is Trump first and always will be Trump first. And sometimes Trump first means Israel before America, but it is always Trump first. Pennycatcher says, what's your thoughts on proportional representation? If it means what I think it means, which is there should be exactly as many, the percentage of black CEOs should be the same as the percentage of black people. And the percentage of female presidents should be the exact same percentage of female people in this country. I'm down for that. All right, someone says, are American interests or ethical foreign policy, meaning no war crimes and invasions, more important? American interests or ethical foreign policy, no war crimes. I think ethical foreign policy is more important, but I also think that ethical foreign policy is in America's best interest. So I kind of reject the premise of the question that we have to pick one or the other. Zoe says, what party do you support? The Democratic Party. Stephen Peterson says, are you surprised the pool Trump had painted is already peeling? No, not. Everything he makes, he does as cheaply as possible and pays the most from taxpayers so that his buddies can get rich. You know? Smoke Creek says, do you think there is going to be a split of the Republican Party, specifically MAGA? I mean, we're already seeing it. You know, there's the liberal, there's the neocons, there's the hardcore MAGAs, and then there's the new Tucker Carlson, fake populist, fake isolationist wing of the Republican Party. It's all bullshit. Cave Johnson says, are you left or right? I am left. Average Joe says, new movie idea, Cracker Barrel and the Rise of the Gravy Seals. I don't know what that is in reference to, but it is pretty fun. Average Joe says, can you pass along a PSA? If anyone has investments in a mutual fund, find out if they will be required to invest in SpaceX. Yes, do not invest in SpaceX, guys. If you have the ability to, do not be a part of funding the world's first trillionaire. Ewan says, why be left when you can always be right? Well, because left-wing politicians are often more correct than right-wing politicians. Josh says, who comes first, American people or illegal immigrants? You know, Josh, it's an interesting question. I can understand why an American citizen who is in need of basic needs, not being able to get them because somebody who is here illegally is getting them instead, I can understand how that would be infuriating. And I would probably light some shit on fire if that was happening to me. But what you find is that if there are any poor people, that is a threat to everybody. If there is anybody who can't get healthcare, that is a threat to everybody. So I'm fine. My compromise with the right is I'm fine with making sure that every American citizen is taken care of before we take care of unlawful immigrants. But it is in our best interest to eventually take care of them as well. Bum says, should water/food be a human right in your opinion? Yes. Eowyn says, right-wing governments have always lasted longer and been more positively impacted to its country. That is inaccurate, Eowyn. SLT Violated, good to see you again, says, do you think the separation of church and state is being quickly eroded more than normal under Trump? Yes, 100%. J-Mag says, who would win in a fight, the richest man in the world or the poorest man in the world? Probably the poorest man in the world. Okay, Bethaza says, first Austria or first Europa? I don't know. Milton says, do you think market regulating itself is good except when it regulates in favor of China? No, I don't think the market regulates itself. We have many, many, many examples of this happening. That is why we need a government, because otherwise the billionaire class could just use their monopolies to control us all. Alex says, do you believe we have a choice when it comes to politics? We do have a choice. Different things happen when different people are in charge. So, ergo, we have a choice. Democrats are currently winning elections left and right, despite the billionaire class and the Trump administration trying to stop that. We 100% have a choice. Angel says, why is fascism so hated on while communism isn't when communism killed more people? I do not believe that communism has killed more people than fascism because I don't think that we've ever seen a real communist country. Alrighty, let's see here. J-Mags, who would win in a fight, a Nazi or an ICE agent? Would an ICE agent win a fight against another ICE agent? I have no idea. Triska and Rabab, thank you so much for helping me reach my first Finger Hearts goal of the day. Alrighty. Mr. Q says, do you think China is friend or enemy? I mean, it's kind of both. We do have a trading relationship with China, but it is clear that China has attacked America in many ways. In currency manipulation, in market manipulation, in I believe that there's been some technological sabotage, though I can't really remember if that was if that was confirmed or if that was just a hypothetical. But yeah, they are a hostile foreign country, and so we should keep that in mind. But the longer we can have a kind of frenemy relationship instead of a straight enemy relationship, the better. Mad Eye Olaf says, communism and socialism always fails. Yeah, always on their own. Absolutely to do with American interventionism at all. Nope, 100% accurate, Mad Eye Olaf. Archie says, where do you lean politically? I'm a progressive Democrat. Average Joe says, do you know in 2021 there was a UN humanitarian resolution to make food and water a basic human right? 2 countries voted against it. Can you guess which 2? I know which 2. It was America and Israel. Average Joe. Someone says America and especially Europe are cooked because of the rise of the far right. I do not believe that, someone. I believe that the far right is threatening us, but I do not believe that we are fully cooked because of them. Alex says, 2 wings of the same plane. No, that is inaccurate, Alex. Would you like me to describe to you some of the different things that happen when Republicans are in charge versus some of the different things that happen when Democrats are in charge? If you just keep on repeating the same nonsense, inaccurate, both sides comments, I will block you. Lonely Soul says, what do you think about abortion, or do you consider it murder, and should it be legalized? It should be legalized because it is healthcare, and when it is made illegal or more difficult to get, then women suffer. It does not decrease the number of abortions that happen. It just makes women suffer more. Even women that aren't trying to get abortions suffer more when there are abortion bans. So just logistically, it does not make any sense to make abortion illegal. Alrighty, J-Mag says, who would win in a fight? I'm not answering any more of these who would win in a fight questions, J-Mags. Angel says, well, socialist countries on the way to communism, Holodomor, the Great Leap Forward, Kazakhstan, Ukraine. I don't buy that at all, Angel. Archie says, what do you think of UK politics currently? What is happening in the UK is very similar to what is happening in America and many other countries. It is a billionaire-funded push towards right-wing authoritarianism because the billionaire class makes more money and has more power and control over all of us when right-wing authoritarians win elections. So they are using their massive power and influence to convince people to vote for right-wing political parties like Reform, Restore, or the Tories, or in America, the Trump MAGA Republican Party. Now, one of the ways they're doing this is by convincing people that immigrants are really bad and dangerous and dirty and other, and that the best way that we can solve all of our problems is by being really shitty to immigrants who are struggling to survive. When that is not the case. Instead, we need to tax the rich and take away all of their political power that they use to ruin all of our lives. Okay, let's see here. Angel says, the USSR and communist China genocides, why don't you accept those? Because the USSR and China were never actually communist. They were authoritarian, and authoritarianism is antithetical to the philosophy of communism. All right, J-Mags, I'm not answering your questions anymore. Isaac says, why taxing the rich the answer? For a couple of reasons. Number one, when you tax the rich, you can then use that money to help the people who are at the bottom of the totem pole. So the poor and the working poor, like the reason why we have problems, any problem, is basically because there are poor people that exist. And if you solve poverty, if you make it so that everybody has their basic needs, then you solve almost every problem that exists. Additionally, when you have people that are that wealthy, you give them a lot of political power. And ergo, they get their political needs met and nobody else does. It's dangerous for some people to have that much power and other people to have so little. That is why we are in this shit that we are in right now. And, we should look at that kind of wealth as being as dangerous as a private citizen having a nuclear bomb, because it is that dangerous. Teddy Lawler says, do you think United Ireland is feasible? Yes. Angel says, I've already said they were socialist countries on the way to communism, so close enough. Well, they weren't even socialist countries, Angel. They were authoritarian. And authoritarianism is contrary to the philosophy of socialism and communism. Lonely Soul says, is Armenia doing the right thing by moving away from Russia and towards the EU? Yes. Mark says, what do you think about Hungary's new prime minister, Peter Magyar? I don't know a ton about him. I'm pretty sure he is a lot better, though, than the previous prime minister. Lonely Soul says, I already did that one. Kenna says, how is it dangerous? Excellent question, Kenna. So if I have $1 billion, then I can pay people to do things that they wouldn't normally do, potentially illegal things. There are ways in which I can use my money to try to influence people, like changing their opinions about things to vote for people that will be against their better interests. Like right now, we are suffering from an American government that is saying it's okay for companies to put cancerous materials into our food and our water and our air. And the reason why we are now all sucking down way more carcinogens is because the billionaire class convinced people to vote for the right-wing politicians that are allowing them to do that. Ergo, it is dangerous. It is killing people the same way that a private citizen could kill a lot of people by having a nuclear bomb. These private citizens, these private billionaires, are using their money to give people cancer because they want to be even richer and more powerful. Okay, Arav says, to what extent do you believe children should be educated and exposed to politics, and why? I think they should know what's going on in the government. I think they should know how the government works. I think start them as early as they possibly can. So long as you are not pushing a specific ideology and you're being accurate in your reporting and your understanding, then, then it's all good in the hoods. Average Joe says, oh, excuse me. Oh my goodness, how rude of me. So sorry. Whew. Okay, let's see here. Average Joe says, if one understands the basics of a pyramid scheme, then that's the best way to explain what unregulated low wealth tax capitalism looks like. 100% accurate. Mikhail Meme says, you missed my message. Where's your message, Mikhail? I stand for making the country safer, make college free, add a Nordic model, take care of climate better, solve homelessness. All right, I'm down for that, but how, Mikhail Meme? Let's see here. Let's get back into these TikTok comments. M Fuzz says, opinion on Palestine and Israeli conflict as an honest man. As an honest man, it is accurate to say that the civilian populations of both of those countries are largely innocent, but that the governing bodies of both of those countries are guilty of war crimes. That's Hamas, and that is the Netanyahu government of Israel. Now, two wrongs don't make a right, obviously. So we're not just trying to say, you started it, you started it, you started it. What I think is important to recognize is that Israel is the more powerful country. And if you are the more powerful country, then it is your job to be the peacemakers. That is your responsibility. I don't give a shit if the poorer country next to you is throwing rocks at your tanks. You don't get to use that as justification to increase the violence, instability that is going on between the two of you. So in lieu of that opinion, America should stop sending money and weapons to Israel because they are not living up to that obligation. Barukak says, thoughts on Marxism. If it's workers owning the means of production, then I'm for it. If it's the government telling me what jobs I'm allowed to do, I'm against it. River says, then why is the U.S. starting war? The U.S. is not starting war. The Trump administration is starting war. Americans do not want this. Even people that voted for Trump and Republicans are against this policy. And if we have free and fair elections in 26 and 28, then we will not have those kinds of politicians in government any longer. But this is a struggle, and there are a lot of Americans who feel the same way as I do. We are working our asses off, but we have a very powerful opponent. That is the people that are currently in charge of the government and the wealthiest people that have ever existed. So give us a fucking break if we don't make it happen every single fucking time. All right, gosh, is Hamas the main governing body in Palestine? So it's difficult because Hamas is kind of in control. You have to imagine Palestine as being like separated into two areas. There's the West Bank and there's the Gaza Strip. The Gaza Strip is largely controlled by Hamas. The West Bank is largely controlled by a group called the Palestinian Authority, though there is some argument to be made about how in control the Palestinian Authority is over the West Bank. And so if you are going to ascribe governing power over the Palestinian people, you would say Hamas and the Palestinian Authority. But, some people might argue that it is exclusively Hamas. I'm not going to make that call. I'm not nearly expert enough to make that call. Alrighty. Hold on a second. We got John Abbott here. There are entire towns where the water supply has been poisoned by AI data centers, and when they post online about it, they get arrested because the local government has been bought off. If that doesn't convince you that an individual having billions of dollars is a threat to the rest of us, I don't know what will. Second that, John Abbott. Run for office. I will vote for you. Or if you're not in my district, I will donate to your campaign. Fuzz says, what is your opinion on Europe and USA making propaganda against Islam? I'm against it. I don't think that governments or countries or continents should make propaganda against specific religions. Papalitna says, what to do with the Jewish elite in the U.S.? I think that we should tax the elite to the point where they are no longer powerful, whether they are Jewish or not Jewish. Papalitna, do not let anybody convince you that the only elite that we need to worry about in this country is the Jewish elite, because there's plenty of Christian elite out there as well that we need to worry about. Fuzz says, what do you think who caused 9/11? Osama bin Laden. Miss Bolton says, do you think extremist right-wingers and extremist left-wingers are at the same level of Delulu? No, I do not. As far as I can tell, extreme left-wingers are saying things like everybody should have access to the things they need, like healthcare and, education and shit like that. Whereas the extremists on the right are saying we should murder abortion doctors and we should allow ICE to torture every brown person they see because there's a 1 in a billion chance that they are here illegally. All right, Danny says, can AOC win the election? Of course. Okay. Mad Eye says, I'm guessing I should have kept to a more American political statements. No, everyone's welcome here. Pirate Luffy, what's up? Good to see you again. Okay, Lever2K says, thoughts on Iran? America, we did another Vietnam, everybody. I told y'all not to vote for Trump, and you voted for Trump and Republicans, and now we had another Vietnam. Congratulations. At least it didn't last as long as the first Vietnam. Gar says, what level of state intervention in markets do you think is good? I guess whatever amount of intervention means that our food is safe to eat, and our air is safe to breathe, and our water is safe to drink, and there aren't billionaires flying around on private jets eating lobster and caviar 3 meals a day while any single individual cannot afford a home or food. Okay, Big Shimmy says, you act like intervention isn't a bipartisan government action in America. I act like intervention. Are you talking about like military intervention, Big Shimmy? There's a big difference between military intervention that happens under Democrats and military intervention that happens under Republicans. Under Republicans, the wars get started. Under Democrats, the wars, they make attempts to end the wars. So I can speak more specifically about that if you like, Big Shimmy. But if you look at the history of the last 50 years, the pattern is clear that it is Republicans that are getting us into these quagmires, etc. Danny says, is Elon Musk's wealth legit? No. Mr. R says, except for Libya. You know that Libya was not a war, right? You know that Obama supporting one side of a civil war against a tyrant is not starting a war, right? Blair Cohen says if the Iran deal is Trump's idea of winning, he's gotten the U.S. in last place. That is accurate. Eno Kent says, what do you think about Karl Marx theory? Workers own the means of production? I am for it. My man Jarrett wearing his I'm a tired dad uniform. If the shoe fits. Big Shimmy says they would have never got off the ground without Obama. Who would have never got off the ground without Obama? Big Shimmy, let me know. Jackson says, can y'all like my first TikTok, please? No, I haven't seen it. Let's see here. Ryan says, what do you think about Destiny? I don't agree with Destiny about a lot of things, but I think that he's generally on the right track. He's weirdly pro-Israel, which I'm like, why? You're a smart guy. Like, surely you can see why what might be an issue. I also don't like debate culture. I think it creates this weird like politics as sport, red team versus blue team kind of shit. It makes it seem as though the point of talking about politics is to win, as opposed to inform and to convince and to coalesce, you know? Okay, let's see here. Lever 2 cases. What was the deal signed with Iran? We're still not 100% sure. Jack says, what your views on the fact that Elon Musk has $1 trillion and still can't buy a decent haircut? You can't buy class. You can never buy class. All right, everybody. Thank you so much for being here, for all of your support, for all your likes, your shares, the gifts. I appreciate all the support you can give me, whether it is the pay kinds or the free kinds. You can send gifts on TikTok. You can send bits on Twitch. You can be a super fan on TikTok. You can be a subscriber on Twitch. And if you have Amazon Prime, you can subscribe to my Twitch channel for free. Costs you $0 if you have Amazon Prime, but it helps me out a lot. You can also join my Patreon for as little as $1 a month, though there's a very fun incentive at $10. Links are in the bio. Hold on a second. Radical Plays says, Gefault, dear Trump. I don't know what that means. Does anybody speak German? Can you tell me what Gefault, dear Trump means? Okay, let's see here. Meccano says, what's your opinion on the Cyprus problem? I don't know what it is. The Fixer Mike says, how did Trump go from anti-intervention his first term to take over or invade everything? Because Trump was never anti-intervention. He says a billion things, and most of them are lies. And one of his lies was that he would be anti-interventionist if he was president. Thank you, Rum Frank. I appreciate that. Okay. Ja, ist Deutsch. Can be English? Can be Angles? Das ist alles? Radical Plays? I played a German in a play once, and my line was, Ja, das ist alles. Beetlejuice says, what's the biggest problem in the UK right now? Billionaires. It's the biggest problem everywhere, and it be spreading. Radical Place says 9. Well, use a translator, man. Google it. I don't have time. Okay, Bossman 2 just said liberal cuck. That is not how your mom described me last night. All right, everybody. If there are any questions that I was not able to get to on this live stream, then please reach out to me. I want to be a resource for you to be more involved and more informed in politics. So if there's any way that I can do that, use me and abuse me. I want you to email me. So you can reach out to me via DMs. DMs are open. You can hit me up via my Discord channel. You can also email me through my website. Links are in the bio for all that good shit. And the Discord channel is great because there's also a great community there. Wonderful people who talk politics in ways that are not shitty. And also there's recommendations there for books and podcasts. And more importantly, there are recommendations for civic actions that we all should be taking, because us doing the work is the only way that we get out of this. I don't really know, to be honest. I don't have an opinion about the Leichensteiner constitutional debates. Radical Play says, do you like Trump? No, I do not. I very much do not like him. Does this translate into German, Radical Plays? No. All right. Regular streaming schedule is Monday through Friday, starting around 11:30 a.m. Pacific time. I don't really know. Says, so rude to even not say the country well. Well, sorry, I don't know Liechtenstein that well. Sam Cop says, we are Charlie Kirk. We carry the flame. We fight for the gospel. What a weird thing to say, Sam Cop. Do not Do not continue saying stuff like that, or you will be banned from my channel. All right, everybody, do the work. If you don't know what the work is, hit me up, and I will let you know what the work is. If you don't, and be good to each other. You don't have to be dicks to other people to do the work. Be good to yourselves. Self-care is part of the work. Munch on it, if you remember from yesterday's show. And I will see you guys tomorrow. Same bad time, same bad channel. Have a great Thursday, everybody. Take care. Bye-bye. Goodbye. Goodbye.